Islamophobia is defined as the dislike or the prejudice against Islam or Muslims. And in recent years, in many parts of the world, this is on the rise. What are the reasons for this, and what can we do to change this narrative and these perceptions? Join our discussion today on Islamophobia.
इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beacon of Truth. This is a live program from MTA International Canada Studios. In this program, we discuss a variety of contemporary issues that are relevant to today's young Muslims. And to help analyze these subjects, we get the views and the expertise of some of our guests as well as the general public. You too can get in touch with us with your comments and your questions. You can send us your questions via Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BeaconMTA. We're also conducting an online poll on social media. We asked the viewers that which of the following is more responsible for the spread of Islamophobia. And the options that were presented were the individuals themselves, the media, the politicians, or perhaps the Muslims themselves. Inshallah, we'll be sharing the results of this poll later in our program. Today, I am joined by my two colleagues, Zahid Abid Sahib and Mansoor Azeem Sahib, both of whom are serving as imams and as missionaries of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Canada. In recent times, with the modern forms of communication, the dissemination of information, as well as the growing trend of spreading false information, this has caused a great confusion as well as an irrational fear in the minds of many people. And by definition, this is exactly what a phobia is. It is an irrational fear of something. We'll be discussing today Islamophobia. What are the causes of this irrational fear of Muslims? What are some solutions to this problem? We'll be discussing, inshallah, those and many more. But first, let's find out what some of the people of the public had to say about their understanding of Islamophobia.
Islamophobia is just the fear of Islam, right? Like I said, it's just based on pure ignorance. You just don't know about something and you just like take everything that you see from the media and you just incorporate it. That's how it starts. Should we give importance to it? I think not. What should really be done about it is really try to educate people about Islam and just help them to understand more what it is. That way we could just fight this, because any form of hatred is very bad anyway.
Islamophobia is a very important subject. My name is Majid and it's Arabic, not Arabic, sorry, it's Muslim. And I was born in Ghana and I have family that are Muslim and I have friends that are Muslim. And I watch how they get treated on a daily basis. And I get treated different until they hear my name. They say, like, what's your name? Majid. That's Muslim. Yeah. Oh, you're Muslim? No. But why does it matter? Your name is Chris. Your name is this. Like, it has nothing to do with it. Right. Everybody should be treated as equal.
Well, Islamophobia is to blame the religion of Islam and people who come from countries who adopted the religion of Islam for the crises in our society, blaming them for why it is that life is the way it is in 2019, usually in inciting violence against these people, usually really demonizing and villainizing these people and things like that. Yeah.
All right, welcome, gentlemen. Let's get right into our discussion today. People, they generally talk about Islamophobia and the fears related with it, as we just heard some of the comments. Mansoor Sahib, can you shed some light on this? Perhaps we need to first talk about acknowledging the fact that this is a real issue.
Yes, Hanan Sahib, the acknowledgement is very necessary. It is very important. And we are living in 21st century where anti-racism, anti-Islamic racism or Islamophobia is a fact. It is a reality. And we must acknowledge it to find a solution to it. If we just keep on saying that it is some sort of self-made thing by Muslim to gain sympathies of the world, then we'll never be able to find some solution of it. And now is the time that we need to be very serious about it, because we have just recently seen that 50 people in Christchurch, New Zealand have lost their lives. due to the Islamophobia. And it is not the only example. Just a couple of months ago, a person tried to destroy Western Europe's biggest mosque, the Beit al-Futuh Mosque in UK. And just a couple of years before that, 6 mosques in Birmingham were vandalized. And these are not the only examples. Muslims are being targeted. Muslims are being discriminated because of their faith around the world. This is how widespread it is. And the Muslim organizations have started to respond. There is one organization here in Canada, and it is pursuing the government to celebrate January 29 as the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Islamophobia. But what is alarming is that only 17% of Canadians approve that such a day should be celebrated. And 50% they disapprove that such a day should be celebrated. For many Canadians, what led them towards disapproval of this day is the overly broad definition of Islamophobia. For them, whatever criticism or whatever negative comment they will be passing on any Islamic practice, whether it be religious, it be cultural, or social, or geographical, it will qualify as Islamophobic. And they want to criticize so that these kind of barbaric traditions or teachings does not take place in their own country, peaceful country. And this is why they disapproved the Islamophobic day. But we need to remember that sometimes people start to affiliate these so-called Islamic terrorist organizations towards all of the Islam. It is not the fact. The Guardian actually has published internal research paper of MI5. MI5 is Great Britain's intelligence agency. It is well known and well respected. And that paper say that these people, these recruits, are not even practicing their religion regularly. They are not from very strong religious households, or they have very little religious literacy. And they are mostly drug-consuming alcoholics and have a greater proportion of converts in them. So we should not be affiliating these kind of terrorist organizations towards Islam. And we should remember that Muslims are the first victims of such organizations. The SNHR reports that over 500,000 people have lost their lives because of the Syria conflict. And Muslims are, again, the first victim by the hands of Taliban and Boko Haram as well. So people should not blame all Islam just because of the act of some terrorist organizations.
Jazakallah. And Zahid Sahib, let's talk a little bit about how we actually reached this point where, for example, even here in Canada, hate crimes against Muslims, they're at an all-time high.
Yes, Hanan Sahib. As you can see that Islamophobia is a worldwide issue. And Canada is also not immune to this issue. And as Canadians, we believe that Canada is a great multicultural society, a great multicultural country. But despite this background, we are seeing that there's a rise in hate against Muslim and Islam. For example, in Quebec in 2016, we had a shooting at a mosque where 6 Muslims were killed. Similarly, in Edmonton recently, police had to be called because there were white nationalists there who were trying to create disorder. So, and then the numbers also support that there is actually a rise in Islamophobia and hate against Muslims. When we look at the numbers from 2016 until 17, within a span of a year, the rise has been 200%, more than 200%. And the victims are those Muslims who are actually quite visible in the way they dress, especially the women. Their scarves are sometimes snatched away when they're traveling in public. And it's not only Muslims, but it also affects the other, other people of the Canadian as well, like Sikhs, who are targeted because people are ignorant about who Muslims are. They just, have prejudice, and based on that, they say that these are Muslims. And so in Canada, again, this number is rising, and this issue that we are talking about today is relevant to all of us.
Jazakallah. Earlier, I mentioned to the viewers that you can get in touch with us with comments and questions through Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag BeaconMTA. Many people have responded to some of the questions that we asked on Twitter about Islamophobia, and they've shared their thoughts on this. We'll go through a few of these comments that have come in. This first one comes from Tosif Rehan Sahib. He says that we see a rise in Islamophobia in Western countries with every terrorist attack by religious extremists in the name of religion. He says that it is important that we educate ourselves and the general public on peaceful and true teachings of Islam to counter Islamophobia in such circumstances. And we asked that, what do you think is the source of Islamophobia? And this comment comes from Madiha Hafiz Sahiba. She says the wrong depiction of Islamic teachings, especially by illiterate people that mislead others about the concept of jihad, about the status of women in Islam, about getting education, etc. She says it is also creating religious extremism among Muslims, which in turn creates this Islamophobia. And Sadia Mehdi Sahiba on regarding the what do you think is the source of Islamophobia? She says the misinformation about the Islamic teachings, and that's it. Rifat Adnan Sahiba, she comments, to understand this global epidemic of Islamophobia, one must realize that hate and fear build this foundation. Attitudes of extreme hatred are usually based in fear, and she says that our primitive survival instinct is to fear anything that appears to be different, which leads to fear of the other. And we'll take one last comment. This one comes from Nayab Khan Sahiba. She says that people do not make an effort to learn about the teachings of true Islam, and they blindly follow what the media shows them. Jazakallah to all of our viewers who have sent in their comments, and inshallah we'll have some time towards the end of our program for the questions. So far we learned about the current state of Islamophobia. I learned that any solution starts by first acknowledging that there is this problem. Many misconceptions of Islam are popularized by the media and anti-Islamic elements. The concept of jihad, as mentioned even by one of our commenters, and the Islamic perspective on women's rights. These are just some of the most misunderstood concepts that we find today. We'll be discussing these misconceptions shortly. But first, let's hear what some people told us about why they think there is this fear of Islam, and if they believe that there is something inherently wrong with Islam. Let's have a listen.
I would say past history events and happen, people just group things. They say black people steal, so all black people steal. White people are rich and do this, all white people are rich. Black people just make music, okay, all black people make music. Black people play basketball, all black people play basketball. It's just grouped. So they see one event, they see 9/11, they say all Muslims cause this, and that's it. It's one group. But they don't understand that the deeper effect within it.
I feel like people fear Islam because they don't know about it. It's mostly like people have this image of it, like, Muslims are dangerous. Muslims are going to kill you. They're going to just explode stuff, It's just that image that they have is all because of the media. And I feel like they fear it just because of ignorance. It's just they don't know about it. They don't really ask.
For people who fear Islam, I think the number one thing is probably going to be the media. We see reports about bombings, terrorist attacks, stuff like that all the time on the media. And that kind of changes people's perceptions on what Islam is and what it represents. They see things like terrorist attacks, Islam bombings, like people who claim to be Islamic going around bombing cities and whatnot.
The reason why Islam's being people are being afraid of it, I think, like I said, all the events that's going on around the world, right? People think that something happens and first thing people target is Islam or Muslims, right? And that's totally wrong because certain groups, we're not even told about what these groups are made of, who these people are. We haven't gone right into in front of these people and asked them what culture you're from, right? So I think people just assume that because of the things that have happened before, right? But that's not totally right. I mean, we can't be sure about it. I think the culture, like I said, should be really explained around,
I think, well, to be frank, the ruling class will always look for an enemy as to who we can split working people apart from each other on. And Muslim people have been used as that villain for a long time, since the 90s and even before, that it's always been looked as the other. These are the villains. These are the ones who are invading our culture, attacking our societies and things like this, right?
So Zahid Saab, jihad, this is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts of Islam. So if you can tell our viewers what jihad is and why some people, they think that it's connected with enforcing certain ideologies.
Yes, Hanan Sahib, as we have also heard and seen in this video, that people do fear certain aspects of Islam. And among many things, jihad is one of the things that always comes up. But first of all, I believe it's also part of ignorance that people don't really know much about Islam, and they base their perception on what they have seen but not really investigated. So jihad is one of those aspects which people have heard about but haven't really researched on it, haven't really read any Islamic literature on it, or the Quran for that matter of fact. They would hear from different people that Quran teaches Muslims that kill if anybody doesn't believe with you, if they don't become Muslims, Muslims are allowed to kill them. So some things like that, and they would say, oh, this is in the Quran, right? But if they're quoting the Quran, then we should look at all the verses on any given topic. So we're talking about jihad. So Holy Quran very clearly says in chapter 9, which is one of the most often quoted by the critics of Islam as a chapter where they say this is like teaching which are continuous in its shape. So they say this was the last revelation. So they say this is like an ongoing order. But when we look at it, any writer who writes a book, he writes only one chapter at a time. Maybe he writes different chapters. But you can't just say that this chapter that he wrote, which is the third chapter in the book, that's the last chapter. That's not the case. So in the Holy Quran, in chapter 9, God Almighty also says that Muslims should not mistreat those who are in contract with them, who have made some sort of pact with them, and they have not aided or abetted anybody against them. So they are at peace, so Muslims should give them peace. Again, in chapter 22, we see that where the permission to fight is actually given, it's in self-defense. Very clearly, Holy Quran says that permission to fight is given to those who have been wronged. So that if you are being wronged, then in that self-defense, you are allowed to protect yourself. And then there are many verses which command Muslims that if the opponents want to come towards peace, Muslims must also come towards peace. There are many examples. For example, jihad is just not limited to fighting with the sword. There are many interpretations of jihad. And first and foremost of those interpretations is self-reformation. Jihad literally means to strive, to struggle, to make every effort that a person can in order to achieve some purpose. So, and in the Holy Quran, it highlights that there are different kinds of jihad. One is affirmation of self. The other is spreading the message of Islam. That is also jihad. And when we look at the example of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, he wrote letters of peace to the Christians, namely in Mount Sinai, and granted them peace for all times, that Muslims will always grant them peace. We find the example of Hazrat Umar when he visited Jerusalem. He refused to pray in the sacred sites of Christians and Jews because he feared that maybe later on Muslims who will come later on, they will try to take these places as their own. So he didn't want that Islam, or it didn't say that Islam gives permission to Muslims to just grab land for no reason. Again, regarding fighting, the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, has been quoted as saying that Muslims should not desire for war. And they should, if it is made necessary for them, then they should show patience. So when we're talking about patience, if it was only to kill people, why patience? Right? It shows that it has deeper meaning to it. Then talking about like the guidelines for war, he has said, don't cut trees, don't kill women, don't kill children, don't kill the elderly, don't kill the monks and the priests, don't destroy temples and churches, don't disfigure dead body, don't kill those who surrender, don't kill those who run away. So there are many things. And lastly but not least, don't force Islam on people. Right? So this shows that, again, what we see happening in what's being done by these Daesh and Taliban, these groups, this is not Islam. They are not following the Holy Quran. They are not following any sunnah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. And when we look at the modern day and age, we find that the founder of Ahmadi Muslim Jamaat, Prophet Messiah, والسلام, he has very clearly written, and he is basing his writing upon the Holy Quran and the sayings of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and he said that according to a hadith and according to the Holy Quran, the jihad of sword is no longer valid. This is the time of jihad of the pen. And the victory of Islam, as quoted by the third successor of the Prophet ﷺ, Nasir Ahmad, that this victory will come by winning the heart. So I think this is our real jihad in this day and age.
Jazakallah, very well answered. And Mansoor Saab, another aspect of this phobia stems from the fear of something different or of the unknown. And one of the very hotly debated topics is the treatment of women in Islam. So the misconception here is that Islam doesn't give the equal rights to their women. So if you can shed some light on that.
Definitely, and obviously we must agree that this is the most aspect which is contributing towards Islamophobia. This is the most hotly debated topic, that God forbid that Islam does not provide women equal status and equal rights. As far as the status is concerned, then Islam is the only religion which provides not just the equal status to women, but 3 times the higher status to women than that of men. Once a person came to the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, saying that, who has the most right over me? The Prophet ﷺ replied that, your mother. He asked again, then afterwards, who has the most right over me? He said again, your mother. The 3rd time he asked that, who has the most right over me? The Holy Prophet ﷺ said the same thing, your mother. And then afterwards, when he asked the 4th time, then he said, your father. So these are 3 times higher status of women. At the same time, once the Holy Prophet ﷺ narrated that if you want to find heaven, then they are under the feet of mother. Al-Jannatu tahta al-aqdam al-ummahat. At another point, another stage, the Holy Prophet ﷺ mentioned that whoever has 3 daughters born to him, and he does the right tarbiyat of them, he will enter paradise. And Islam is the only religion which has given the example of women to explain all of its followers. But the 2 women, either Asiya or Mary's mother of Jesus Christ. So either we, the followers, all Muslims, are either Asiya or Mary, mother of Jesus. As far as the status, the women rights are concerned, there is another allegation that Islam, God forbid, does not provide equal rights to women as well. As far as the rights are concerned, then we should look at the time before the advent of Islam. That what was the status, what was the situation, what was the condition of women before Islam. They used to be buried alive. They used to be treated as objects. The Arab poets used to disgrace women in their poetry. It was Islam which gave them the rights of inheritance. It was Islam which provided them respect in society. It was Islam which safeguarded their modesty. Allah Ta'ala says in the Holy Quran in chapter 33 verse 60, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu kulli azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minina yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna zalika adna an yurafna fala yuzain. That, O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers that they should draw close to them portions of their loose outer covering, that is nearer that they may be distinguished and non-molested. So the teaching of parda is to safeguard the modesty of women and so that they cannot get abused.
Jazakumullah. We have time for a few more comments that have come in from the viewers. This comment comes from AMA UK Gallery. The comment that a recent article in a UK national newspaper asked that why do so many of us not care about Islamophobia? And they say that is it because we are subjected to so many negative images of Muslims that we have become desensitized? There is some truth to that. Indeed, we do become desensitized to things when we repeatedly see them in the media, and Islamophobia is just one of those things. So eventually we stop questioning and it becomes almost normalized. And we asked that how do you respond to Islamophobia in society? And this comment comes all the way from Ghana by Idrisu Sungnuma Sahib. He comments about how to respond to Islamophobia. He says, try as much as I can to stay core to the Islamic way of life and pray to Allah to help with the rest. And Asifa Ahmed Saiba, she says that if I feel there is room to talk, I invite them into a dialogue. And if not, I say peace, I smile and pray for them. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ used to do the same when the hypocrites used to attack him or mock him. And we'll take one last comment. This one is from Farhana Zafar Sahiba. She says that I respond to Islamophobia by acting in ways which contradict the negative views held against Islam. Essentially, I respond to it by acting in good ways as Islam has prescribed to do so. Jazakallah to our viewers who have sent in all of their comments. Inshallah, we'll go through some of the questions later in our program. So Zahid Saab, now talking about Islamophobia, one of the main allegations that are presented against Islam is in regards to this fact that they feel that Muslims can't integrate into modern society or to the Western society. So let's answer this, that can Islam be integrated with the West?
Yes, Hanan Sahib, there is this notion out there that Muslims and Islam are not compatible with Western values and Western civilization. But unfortunately, this is again just a myth. There's no basis on it. And if I wanted to give a short answer, I would say yes, Islam is capable of integrating with the Western society. And Hazrat Khalifatul Masih V, our beloved Imam, Ayatollah bin Nasir Aziz, has very clearly said that true Islam has no difficulty in integrating with the West. Why? Because Islam teaches us so many good values which are exactly what Western values are. For example, when we talk about being law-abiding citizens, this is what West wants its followers, citizens to do as well. The rights of neighbors, respecting their rights, their boundaries, serving the country, not becoming a burden on society in any way, earning your own keep. So far as Islam is concerned, it teaches us that Muslims should, earn their own keep. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, has been quoted as saying that the upper hand is better than the lower hand, meaning that Muslims should not be dependent on others. They should be providing for themselves. And the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, who is the representative of true Islam, putting Islam in the best shape, under the leadership of Khalifatul Masih, has established Humanity First, which is a charitable organization, and the Humanity First through its food bank, through their shelter programs, and our youth Muslims for Life program donating blood, and our professionals, lawyers, doctors, engineers. These are all practicing Muslims, and yet they are perfectly integrating into the Western society.
Jazakallah. And obviously for true Muslims, integration should not even be an issue, because Islam teaches, and this is one of our core teachings as well, is the loyalty to one's country. And this is part of the faith. So Mansoor Sahib, if you can elaborate on this aspect of loyalty to one's country.
Yes, this is one of the factors that is contributing towards Islamophobia. People think that, some people have migrated or some people have come to the developed countries, and now they will still be remaining affiliated with their previous countries. They will still be loyal to their previous countries where they have come from. But they should remember that in Islam, it is a fundamental teaching that the Holy Prophet ﷺ has said, Hubbul watani min al-iman, that loyalty of one's country is part of their faith. So to complete one's faith, to complete one's religion, one must be loyal to his country, which has provided them peace, which has provided them shelter. But at the same time, we cannot just blindly abide by all the laws of the government, just because we have come to the new culture or new society just to be part of it. For example, integrating or loyalty does not, and it can never mean that you start going to pubs and clubs and start drinking alcoholic drinks just to be integrating, just to be part of this. Hazur, our beloved Imam, he has mentioned that integrating and loyalty to country, it actually means to become a positive, valuable asset to your country. It means that to work hard for the development of the country, which has provided you peace and shelter. It also means that pay your taxes to the government so that you won't be a burden on the shoulders of the taxpayers. And contributing towards establishing the infrastructure. And the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is one of the face of Islam, which is contributing towards the country. And the Ahmadi Muslims have been contributing in a way that they have been collecting here in Vaughan for a decade now for a hospital. And by the grace of Allah, we have now seeing by our own eyes that the construction have already been started. And the other things, one of them is the Muslims for Remembrance Day, where Muslims are collecting funds for veterans and their families. So
in many facets of just a regular day-to-day life, Muslims are integrated and part and parcel of the fabric of the society.
Yes.
Jazakallah. Now, earlier through social media, we asked the viewers which of the following is more responsible for the spread of Islamophobia, and the options that were presented is the individuals, the media, the politicians, or perhaps the Muslims themselves. We have the results in for this poll now. And which of the following is more responsible for the spread of Islamophobia? 20% are saying that it is the individuals, 42% are believing that it is the media, 21% believe it is politicians, and 17% believe that it is the Muslims themselves. So it looks as though the opinions of the public is almost spread equally across some of these options. And majority of the people who took part in our poll, they've suggested that the media, it has played this role in the rise of Islamophobia. So we asked a human rights activist and an attorney, Qasim Rashid Sahib, that what kind of role the media has played in creating and perpetuating this rise of Islamophobia. Let's have a listen.
Well, the media has played a significant role in creating and spreading Islamophobia. As our beloved Hazur, may Allah strengthen his hands, has said numerous times, that media is the oxygen that terrorism needs to thrive. And what media should be doing is specifically differentiating extremism from Islam, but too often they conflate them. And we see repeatedly examples of media calling it Islamic terrorism, as if Islam has anything to do with terrorism whatsoever. The other thing that media has documentedly done on numerous occasions is that when a Muslim does commit some kind of act of extremism, it gets far more attention than when, let's say, a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi commits an act of terrorism. And there's a much higher likelihood that that act is attributed to the Muslim's faith or their identity as a Muslim, as opposed to a white supremacist being tied to their faith as a Christian. The KKK, for example, right here in Virginia, issued a statement a few years ago that they don't like being called a hate group because they call themselves a Christian organization. Now, obviously, anyone who knows anything about the teachings of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, knows that it's impossible to be a Christian and to promote terrorism. But somehow the KKK has found a way to say that we can be a racist terrorist organization and still call ourselves Christian. And so the level of ludicrousness that somebody would have at those who argue that the KKK is Christian, that's the same level of ludicrousness someone should have when someone claims that Daesh or the Taliban is a so-called Islamic organization. But media, unfortunately, too often conflates the two. And it's that conflation that results to a lot of misinformation and fear-mongering in our community, in the masses, and results in an increase in hate crimes against Muslims or those perceived to be Muslim as well. And I think this is an important element, that the results of this Islamophobia isn't just something that impacts Muslims. We forget that the very first person killed in a hate crime after 9/11 was a Sikh man. And the levels of attacks on Sikh Americans, on Hindu Americans, on Arab Christians has skyrocketed. And there are at record highs right now due to this anti-Muslim Islamophobic sentiment that unfortunately pervades the media too much.
So this is another aspect of the rise of Islamophobia, is in regards to this Islamophobia industry. So this is a very interesting thing. So what role has that played in the spreading of this anti-Islamic rhetoric?
I think the Islamophobia industry does play a very strong role in spreading and perpetuating this narrative against the Muslims and Islam. When we look at it, it may seem that there is not much there, but when we see that there are certain factions or a certain part of the media, not all media, but there are definitely certain parts of it whose main goal or aim is to present Islam in a negative light. They will bring on speakers and people who are so-called experts on Islam. They're experts on Middle Eastern politics, Islamic history, things like that. And whenever they would talk about Islam, they would present it as in a negative light, and they would quote some, obscure quotes, and they would not actually talk about what the Holy Quran is saying. As I have already mentioned, that the Holy Quran, when talking on jihad, is very clear that it's not just some, one verse. There are many verses, and it is in self-defense. The other reason why this is on the rise, the Islamophobia industry is getting bigger and bigger, is because there's a lot of money which is available for these individuals who involve themselves in this, who promote this. According to one American scholar, Nathan Lean, he has written extensively about this. Those who are involved in this, these individuals can earn up to $200,000 by getting involved in this industry. And it's always media links these terrorist acts by people. And if it's Muslims, they always term it as if this is, Islam, and this is what the teachings are. But if it's somebody else, they would just call it that, they won't relate it with their faith. That is one way of seeing it, how it is a part of the media's problem, that they play this role. And especially since 9/11, Muslim-linked terrorism has killed 37 people, which is, yes, indeed unfortunate. But on the same time, 200,000 people have been killed by gun violence. But the coverage one gets over the other is astronomical. The difference is great, and this is where we see that this is because of Islamophobia, and that there are some aspect of society who have made it their aim, their livelihood, that this is what they want to achieve.
And because of that, it's spread all across
Yes.
the different social
It's
media
become very
channels.
common in public.
Yes, Jazakumullah. We asked a second question to Qasim Rashid Sahib about the role of Muslim clerics now in the rise of Islamophobia. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Muslim clerics unfortunately play a significant role in promoting Islamophobia. And it sounds strange to say that Muslims are promoting Islamophobia, but it's important to understand the nuance here. It is very easy and in many places correct to blame media, but media isn't acting in a vacuum. They are reporting, in some cases, on the words of actual clerics or so-called clerics who promote extremist ideology. And I think it's fundamentally important for Muslims to be very clear in condemning the terrorism promoted by some Muslim clerics. The Quran repeatedly calls us to act with justice in all affairs. And here's an example: when you have extremist clerics promoting nonsense like death for blasphemy or death for apostasy, we must stand absolutely unequivocal and clear that not only is this completely un-Islamic and has nothing to do with the teachings of Islam, we must be able to show logically and scripturally how this has nothing to do with the teachings of Islam, and we must be able to exemplify that by reliving the example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who demonstrated that on these things like death for blasphemy or apostasy, these are completely antithetical to what the Quran actually teaches. The problem is that you have these Muslim majority regimes like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, other Muslim majority countries that have legitimized these extremist ideologies by making them part of their legislation, making them part of their constitutions. So it isn't just a matter of helping people in general understand that Islam doesn't teach this. We need to actively work to repeal these draconian and barbaric laws that are effectively radicalizing young people and teaching them that might makes right, when in actuality that has no basis in morality whatsoever. So it's this combination of clerics who are power hungry and in many cases wholly ignorant to Islam, and media who is ratings hungry and driven to make the most sensationalist headline possible, joining forces for this very volatile and destructive combination, resulting in an increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes, an increase in laws and policies that delegitimize Americans who are Muslim, strip away their civil rights. And we can talk about just the practical ramifications of that. But I think it's important fundamentally to understand that this is not just the media, it's not just the clerics, it's the combination of the two working together that's created a very volatile and destructive system for Muslims or those who are perceived to be Muslim.
And we can't only put the brunt of the blame on the media. Even, for example, as our poll results, they suggest that a number of people believe that the Muslims themselves are to blame for this rise. And this is perpetuated, for example, by the horrific recent bombings that we saw in Sri Lanka and other ones as well. So how have the beliefs of some Muslim scholars, and then obviously that goes on to then spreading amongst their congregations, how has that contributed to this Islamophobia?
Well, as Qasim Rashid Sahab has just mentioned, it is not just one thing. Neither scholars can do any harm, nor media alone can. It is the combination of the two which is causing harm to Islam, which is contributing towards Islamophobia. And we cannot just put all the blame, all the responsibility over media. Definitely, the Muslim scholars have some negative comments passed over in the East as well as in the West. Scholars like Maududi, for example, right? And he has expressed his views that Islam has spread through sword instead of peace. And these kind of expressions, these kind of statements have led people to believe that Islam is actually spread through violence. And we are listening to Hazur's Friday sermon, a series of Friday sermon in which Hazur is narrating the incidents of the companions. We learn that companions were ready to sacrifice their own lives for the sake of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. The love towards the Holy Prophet ﷺ is summarized in one of the poet Hassan bin Sabit. He says, "Kunta suwada li naziri, fami alayka nazir. Man sha'a ba'daka falyamut fa alayka kuntu hazir." That you were the sight of my eye, you were the beloved, and after your demise, I do not care whoever dies after. So this was the love of the companions towards the Holy Prophet, and the scholars have mistreated it in a way. that Islam has spread through violence.
And by doing so, they've done a very great disservice to Islam and perpetuated this hatred and the rise of Islamophobia. Jazakallah. We have time now for a few questions and comments towards the end of our program. This one question comes from Sabiha Ashraf Sahiba. She asks that Islamophobia has increased in the past couple of years, and she says that in this society, how does an Ahmadi Muslim or even just any regular Muslim live with such positivity, despite this era of negativity around it?
Yes, Hanan Sahib, I think this question we need to look at in the light of the teaching of Islam and from the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was the very first one who faced persecution because of his faith, because of Islam. And when we look at his life, we find that he did not, shrink at that moment, and he did not become a negative person. He always remained positive, and he always tried to help people despite what they may have thought about Islam or himself. There's a very famous story about him helping out an old lady who was leaving Mecca because she feared that she would be, bewitched by Muhammad and she would be forced into accepting Islam. So Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, himself helped her to her destination, and when she found out about that it was Muhammad who was helping her, she was very changed, and this changed her attitude towards him. And I think in this day and age, following the example of our beloved Khalifa, Aziz, that we need to engage people, we need to do good in this world so that people can relate Islam and Muslims to its real teaching, which is of compassion and mercy. The Holy Quran teaches us this fundamental principle that the good washes away the evil. So if we continue to do good in our environment, then it will have, over time, it will create that positive change in our society as well.
Jazakumullah. And we'll take just a couple more comments from some of our viewers. We asked that, is Islamophobia a form of racism or religious intolerance? And this comment comes from Muhammad Iqbal Khan Sahib. He says that it is both, because it partly comes from ignorance of what Islam actually teaches, and partly from the assumption that mostly non-white people or Arab, South Asian people practice it, and they try to disguise it as legitimate criticism, as racist religious bigots do with other races and faiths. So he's saying that it's both ignorance and bigotry. And we asked that what should be done to reduce Islamophobia, and this comment comes in from Harim Ahmad Sahib. He says, to reduce Islamophobia, we should invite people who have questions about Islam to our interfaith programs, and we should discuss with them any questions that they have about Islam. And he says that discussion is very important, and indeed it is the most important, because this way we can dispel some of these myths surrounding Islam and Islamophobia. So Islam, this is a religion that promotes a universal peace, and a true follower of this religion, wherever they go, the peace will follow them, whether it is in the East or in the West. And unfortunately, Islamophobia, it does exist, and we as Muslims here in the West do sometimes face scrutiny. But this is a fact. This is in fact a very important opportunity for us to change this rhetoric around Islamophobia. So we as the practicing Muslims have a great power, in fact, in creating this change. We can do this by being contributing members of our society, create awareness, while also showing a practical example of what it means to be a Muslim. And in this day and age, we Ahmadi Muslims have the great blessing of Khilafat-e-Ahmadiyya to guide us to the true principles of Islam, teach us how to respond to all these contemporary issues, including Islamophobia. The addresses, the sermons, the question and answer sessions of His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah strengthen his hands. It prepares us to answer common questions that people ask about Islam, but they also teaches us how to respond to the criticisms in an Islamic way, and in the manner taught to us by the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam. Jazakallah Zahid Sahib, Jazakallah Mansoor Azeem Sahib for a very interesting discussion. Thank you for tuning in and joining our conversation. Please do send us your feedback and your comments at our Twitter handle, which is @beacon_MTA, or you can email us at beacon@mta.tv. Do join us again, same time next week at 1900 GMT on Beacon of Truth. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you all.
सदाकते इस्लाम कुछ भी हो जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े हमें, जाएंगे हम जहाँ भी के जाना पड़े